Hey y'all, it's Crystal. Welcome back. Today is a book chat video. We're going to do a book tag. Juan over at Plagued by Visions created an original tag called The Faces of Horror, in which we talk about some of the things about horror that we like. His sort of, for what I'm gathering from his sort of premise of this tag, is that horror in general gets sort of a bad rep of being sort of lowbrow, lesser than, and in the greater scheme of literature, and that horror actually tells some really amazing stories and should be considered, to be really awesome stuff, basically. So so he's got 6 questions here, so I'm gonna dive right into it. All right, so the question is a horror story that has scared or disturbed you. And scared or disturbed, to me those things from me feel very different. Something that scares me doesn't necessarily disturb me. So I've got a couple different answers for this one. So something that has scared me, well, think of like when I get scared, I get there's that, maybe your body heat goes up a little bit. You get that sort of tightness in your chest and your gut. Maybe like the hair on the back of your neck kind of prickles a little bit. You just get this sensation, like, well, you get that feeling of being scared, right? And so I think that's one reason that, not necessarily why I read horror, it's definitely why I watch horror movies, because that feeling of being scared. But one thing that scares me the most is, that thing that's just unseen. Something that's lurking in the dark. Something right, out of the corner, like you can't quite see it out of the side of your eye, but maybe something's there. The old monster under the bed, the monster in the closet, something there, but you're not seeing it because it's, there's a shadow there, or it's dark. Ghostly things. Something's there, but you just can't see it. That stuff scares the heck out of me. And I know some people that doesn't bother, but for me, I will give myself nightmares thinking there's something in the house with me. And I've always been that way since I was a kid. So growing up in an old house didn't do me any favors. Creaked and moaned, and I just was like, would scare myself. So I didn't sleep much, but but anyway. So a book for me that gave me those feelings of being totally scared is The Shining by Stephen King. I know it may be basic of me, but this book scares me, and because it plays on all those things that are scary for me personally. Something's there. You're not always sure. It's not always unseen. Sometimes it is. But there's something there, right? And it's just unexplainable. It's scary to me. There's particularly when Danny goes out to the playground and starts playing on the playground. I had to stop reading. I had to take a little break and gather myself and come back after that, because I needed a pause, because that was so scary to me. If you read it, then you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to spoil it, of course. This book, the book scares the crap out of me. The movie doesn't scare me. The book scared me. Gave me, like I said, that feeling, that tightness in my chest, and that the hair kind of standing up on my arms. Just that prickly feeling of being totally scared. Yeah, nothing has topped The Shining for me for that. So, but something that has disturbed me is different than that. And disturbing, is, I think about what is disturbing. What does that mean for me? And to me, it's kind of like when you consume something, reading a movie, whatever, and everyone has that line. Most people have a line. Some people don't, I'm sure, but there's a line that you're willing to go to, and then after that line, it's a big nope. So that can be a disturbing when that line has been breached for you. Or like something that is just something that you just never really thought about at all, as someone has put that either onto a page or onto a screen or whatever, and you're just like, oh God. Oh no. Oh gosh, no thank you. Yeah, so I have a couple of those that I want to mention now, because these are two books that I have read that disturbed me, and I still think about them, which I think is the mark of something, right? So the first one will be Augustina Basterica's Tender is the Flesh. Very disturbing book. We live in a world where all animal consumption is done for. A virus or something has wiped out all animals, and so we as humans, of course, just decide to breed other humans and start consuming human flesh. And of course, we get all that descriptions of raising humans for slaughter, even the actual slaughtering process itself. Okay, right. But I've read cannibal stories, so I read a lot of horror, right? That wasn't necessarily disturbing. It was like, ugh, but when she started, gave me like things that she thought of that I would never have probably thought of if I were to think about what kind of world would we be if consuming human flesh was something that we decided was okay. And that's like, where do we get our milk from now? Where does leather come from now? Big game hunting. She thought of it all, and I just that disturbed me. It was, and I still think about it so much. It's so good, but it's, it just gave me that, oh no, that feeling of being disturbed. And while reading Christopher Triana's They All Died Screaming, I think I realized where my line was. That line that I just am not sure I ever really want to cross ever again. And I won't say because I don't want to spoil, but it involves pigs. And this book is bananas anyway. There's a lot going on in this book. There's all kinds of other stuff, violence, murder, sexual assault, rape, kidnapping of a kid, extreme violence. But it was this one thing. I was like, oh no, that's just too. You've gone too far. So that was a case of where my line was crossed of something being just so disturbing to me. I cannot get it out of my brain. It's stuck there forever. Thanks very much for that. So yeah, those two things are different for me, being scared and being disturbed. So there's a few examples for me. So number 2 is a horror story that depressed you or made you cry. And I can't actually have actually cried at a horror story. There's sad horror stories, of course, especially when you have a story sort of centered around grief. Something like Pet Sematary or Crossroads by Laurel Hightower. Those things are very sad and definitely bring out those emotions. But something that really depressed me when I was thinking of my answers was a story out of Monsignor Brian Boyer's short story collection, Sinister Mix. The story in question is Maternal Flame. This story is a gut punch. It is it's a story about, there's a mom and her young kid. I think he's like 6 or 7. He's pretty young. And it's the classic tale. They're in a store, and the mom looks around one minute he's there, the next second he's gone, so he's been abducted. And it just doesn't end well, and I was very depressed. I was very depressed by the end of that story. I think about it now and I'm just like, oh God, why you gotta do me like that? You know, it's very depressing, that story. I'm thinking about it now and yeah, I'm sad. But anyway, it's a wonderful story. Brian Boyer is one of those guys. Anyway, he holds no punches. I mean, no one is safe in his stories. So I know, you know what you're getting kind of when you're reading a Brian Boyer. But that story in particular was just, oh man, I was bummed out, to say the least. So there's that one. Number 3 question: a horror story that made you laugh. I try to think, because there's some funny horror out there that I enjoy, but something that actually kind of made me laugh out loud. I was like, well, gosh, I don't know. And then immediately what popped in my mind, and I hate to put 2 Stephen King books on here, but is Needful Things. This book is kind of silly to me. It's really good, but it's also kind of just ridiculous at the same time. It's really ridiculous. And there's several just hilarious scenes in this story. Because, Leland Gaunt moves into town and he opens a store named Needful Things, in which people come in and they'll find that one thing they really, really want, and you just need to do a favor for Mr. Gaunt and you can have that thing. And slowly the townspeople will just start turning on each other, and it starts off as really silly pranks, like throwing mud at clean sheets on a clothesline. Silly things which are funny, and it devolves into total mayhem. And like I said, it's I don't know. I think this is a funny book, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy Needful Things. I like this one a lot, but there's some silliness in it, and I think King actually really leans into the silliness of the story. And I think that's why it works so well for me, anyway, because it's one of his bigger ones. But I was just in it. There's the lady who gets the Elvis thing. If you know, you know. It's funny. It's hilarious to me. So this one definitely is lighthearted. More so for me, and it's silly and it makes me laugh. So that's my answer for that one. All right. Number 4, a horror story that made you angry. Now, I could have gone back to this story that I mentioned here in Brian Boyer's, because it depressed me, but it also was like, dude, why you gotta do me like that? But I tried to think of a story where I actually got really mad. Like, I was so pissed off. And that is the new sort of rebooted series of The Stand that came out. Was that last year or year before on CBS? Didn't like it. Didn't like it at all. And I was actually really upset and pissed off because I didn't like it, what they did with that miniseries, with that series. The Stand, I love, right? It's one of my favorite books by King. I've read it several times throughout my life. It's just one of those books where I like the story, the original miniseries. I watched that. It's great. And I was like really excited about a reboot. I was like, a reboot could be cool, And I was excited about some of the casting. I was like, okay, all right, this is going to be really, really awesome. And so we signed up for CBS. We paid for it and everything. And we were watching it. My husband and I were watching this, and we were like, first couple episodes, okay. And then I would just hate watching it by the end of it. I was so I'm still really upset, particularly in the portrayal of Trash Can Man. I don't know what the hell they were thinking when they decided to portray him as this feral wild man, but I was offended. I was so ticked off. I'm still pissed off about it because you have a lot to work with The Stand. It's a great story, right? And you just mess it up like that. Oh, big nope from me. And I'm going to move on because I'm getting hot over here. Okay. Number 5, a horror story that is important to you. And I got a couple here too. I'm going to bring up Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. It was one of my first horror stories that I ever, it wasn't the first, but it was the one that I think really got me into horror, particularly Anne Rice and vampires, and this is sort of representative of my teen years is this book. And I owe a big debt to Miss Anne Rice for her stories and getting me to sort of embrace that darker side of things, and so this story will always kind of have a special place in my heart, and it is important to me. I do love it so. And I also want to bring up Alien, the movie Alien, because I love that movie. It's my favorite horror movie. And it introduced me to, my favorite character, or one of my favorite characters ever, Ellen Ripley. I love that movie. And the whole franchise as general, it's got ups and downs, right? But the premise of just usually being trapped on some sort of spaceship with this god-awful terrifying creature, it's terrifying, right? It's one of the first movies that I really remember really scaring me. Particularly, when Ellen, when Ripley thinks everything's fine, right? She's like, oh gosh, we're good to go. And so she's kind of relaxing. She's like, oh man, she's on a little, escape pod or whatever. And then the alien head moves off on the shelf. Oh man, it still gets me when I watch it. It's still so good. And these movies are some of my favorites. They'll always be important to me because I just love them so much. And how much I love Ripley as a character. I think she's one of the best ever. So I wanted to mention it because it's important to me because I just think they're special. They're good. It's good stuff, And Tom Skerritt, come on now. All right. Number 6, the final question. A non-horror story that you consider horror. Again, maybe this is basic. The first thing that popped in my mind, though, was, of course, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Considered more literary, sometimes labeled as sci-fi because of the dystopian type, nature. But this is nightmare fuel. Nightmare fuel to me, anyway. This is pretty scary stuff to me. People know what The Handmaid's Tale is about, but living in a society where women have actually zero control over anything that they do. That's a horror story to me. Control, of course, over their own bodies, their own sexuality, their own fertility, that kind of stuff, of course. But even their own, even the upper class women, they're not allowed to read. They can't even do anything, really. Women are just worthless in this society. And they're only, just used, their bodies are used either as, a sexual reproduction or, for helping to cook and clean around the house, or to be some sort of steward of the home, this sort of homemaker type woman who actually can't do anything either because she's very powerless also. This is a nightmare, and I would call this a horror story. Absolutely. So that's my answer for that one. So that's all of the questions. Just 6 short questions. Thanks, Juan, for putting that together. I think I'm looking forward to seeing what other people, it's definitely going to spark some discussions, I think, about what it is we like about horror, or in some cases maybe don't like about horror, but and why we continue to read and watch and consume it as much as we do. So yeah, that's going to do it for me. And I won't, do I tag somebody? Tag you're it, if you would like to do the tag, I will link Juan's video below so you can take a look at his first, because he of course explains it a lot more, his goal for the tag. And so I'll link that below for you to check that out also if you haven't seen it already. And that's going to do it for me. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that you're doing well, and thanks for spending some time with me today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye, friends.